What is going on, everybody? Today, I am going to be making a tier list for all of the different things that fungus do in our society and our environment. Now, fungi does a whole bunch of different stuff for both us and the environment, so we're going to be covering a wide range of things here today, but that just goes to show how crazy and important mushrooms and fungi are for all life on this planet, and humans especially. This list is going to be made up of the scientific importance, and a lot of these rankings are also going to be based on my opinion. So if anyone disagrees with that, let me know down in the comments below. And for now, we're going to get right into it. So we're going to be making a normal tier list, right? And I think it's good for me to define what tiers are going to mean. So starting off with S tier, these are the most important things that fungi do for both humans and the environment. These are the things that we couldn't live without. And so it's going to be a very exclusive category. And if you think that there's anything else that I left out that belongs in this category, let me know down in the comments. So now for A tier, these are going to encompass a lot of the things that fungi do that are super important for humans and are important for ecosystem function, but they might not be 100% necessary for humans and ecosystem function. They are just the super important, awesome, cool things that fungus do. Now, B tier is going to be stuff that also is cool and important, but perhaps less people know about, and it isn't quite as big of a deal in, your daily life, but is still important. Now, C and D tier are going to be things that are definitely important for ecosystem function because all of the roles of fungi are very important for healthy ecosystem function, but these are often things that are detrimental or just non-impactful for human life and human health. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is how fungi interacts and contributes to our food. At first impressions, it might seem kind of boring, right? It might be like a C tier because, some people love mushrooms and some people hate it, You guys can talk about that in the comments. But what is often overlooked that for me jumps this up to an immediate A is things like beer, wine, bread, and even a lot of the things you might not have realized that come from fungi, such as citric acid, right? All of these things use yeast to either produce ethanol, CO2, or in the case of citric acid, the yeast directly makes citric acid, which if you check your pantry, you can find a bunch of foods that use it. And citric acid is most definitely not the only example of this. A lot of acids that are used in foods do come from yeast. And take a look in your pantry, see what you have, and there's a good chance that the food you eat daily has some component that comes from a fungus, right? And so just how important it is for our everyday foods and how many foods use and rely on fungus, it's an A for me, for sure. Now, looking up next, we have lichen. And a lot of people don't exactly know what lichen is, and lichen is easily confused for moss because they do look quite similar. But you'll find lichen growing on trees, rocks, sidewalks, honestly, just about anywhere where there's room for lichen to grow, you can find it there. And what lichen is it is a combination of a fungal component and an algal component that work together. And it makes them very, very robust and very, very tolerant. And as long as there is water, air, and sunlight, they're usually pretty good to go. I am going to give lichen a strong B, and honestly, it could be bumped up into a B+, mainly because their importance for building new soils and the development of new ecosystems. Because lichen is what's called a pioneer species. And they're called pioneer species because, just as I mentioned, they can live about anywhere. And so they're oftentimes the first organisms to establish themselves on bare rocks and are the foundation for the soil that other plants grow in. And lichen are also very important because they function as indicators for air quality, so they're useful to determine environmental health. And to be honest, they're also just super cool. It is two different species that work together and become one organism, and there's really nothing quite like it in nature. And so if I could give it a B plus, I would. Now, next up is fungal parasites and pathogens. And while technically parasites and pathogens are two separate things, I decided to lump them together into the same spot on the tier list because I feel like they go hand in hand. And I feel like there's no need to talk about them twice because they can both be pretty nasty. And there are all sorts of different parasites and pathogens, and they infect just about every type of organism, whether it's plants, animals, and even other fungi. And one of the big problems that humans face with parasites and pathogens is that they are very difficult to deal with and treat. And one of those reasons is because fungi is more complex than bacteria. And fungi can take several weeks to months of consistent treatment to properly treat, while bacterial infections take a few days or weeks. And for pathogens, they also cause major issues with agriculture. The primary cause of the Irish potato famine was the potato blight, which is a fungus. And there's also a bunch of agricultural issues that are caused by rusts and smuts that infect a whole host of different crops and make them unedible. And oftentimes, when people think of fungal parasites, they tend to think of the Last of Us series, which features a human-eating cordyceps. And while these cordyceps are real, they do not infect humans or even mammals. They're pretty much exclusive to insects. And the only reason why the parasites and pathogens doesn't get an F, honestly, is just because I think cordyceps are cool. Like, they're super cool the way they infect insect nervous systems, unlike a whole lot else I've seen in nature. And also, these pathogens do serve an important purpose for population control in the environment. But outside of that, the best I can give them is D tier. Now, the next thing on our list is mycorrhizae. Now, mycorrhizae is not super well known, and honestly, I think that is a true shame. If you don't know much about mycorrhizae before stumbling upon this video, I highly recommend you check out other content that talks about it in more depth, because in my opinion, it is one of the coolest yet relatively under-researched topics in environmental science and science as a whole. And essentially what mycorrhizae is it is fungus that lives within the soil of essentially all ecosystems. And this fungus interacts with the roots of plants and does a whole bunch of different things. It can make plants more resistant to disease. It can help them grow faster. It can make plants more resistant to drought. It allows plants to communicate to one another in the forest, and it can help give carbon to plants that are struggling to prevent them from dying. Right? It is vital for ecosystem function, and there's still so much that is unknown about it, and it is a growing field of study. And for all those reasons, mycorrhizae, easy S tier. Now, medication. When thinking about the most important technological advancements that people have made, one of the biggest ones that comes to mind is the development and advancement of medicine. And one of the most groundbreaking medical advancements was the creation of the first antibiotic, which is penicillin. And one thing that many people may not know is that penicillin was originally derived from a fungus in 1928. And the use of fungus in medical development did not stop with penicillin. A whole host of important drugs, such as lovastatin for cholesterol and lanatin for chemotherapy, have been derived from fungus. There's medications that helps with postpartum hemorrhaging, migraines, and act as immunosuppressants, and the list goes on. On the back of penicillin alone, I think that the development of medication puts it into A tier. Now, psychedelics. A topic that is very hard to gloss over when talking about fungi and mushrooms is psychedelics. And there's a significant debate whether they're good or bad or somewhere in between. And while trying to find a rank for how important psychedelics are in our society, it's still kind of up in the air. And due to the fact that they're considered a Schedule 1 drug in the United States, it's incredibly difficult to get adequate research done for such a complex topic. And the information surrounding them is kind of lacking, meaning that without further research, their importance could go up or down significantly. There are current studies that are looking into the application of psychedelics for the treatment of mental illnesses such as depression and PTSD. And if these studies find out that there's a significant therapeutic benefit, then psychedelics will become significantly more important. However, where they stand now, I'm going to put them into C tier until future medical developments come in, and my ranking may change. Now, finally, if you were to ask anyone on the street, what do mushrooms and fungus do? Their first answer is probably going to be decomposition. This is for a good reason. Decomposition is one of the primary roles that fungus serves in the ecosystem. And the reason that is because fungi can produce a lot of unique enzymes that allow them to break things down, such as wood and cellulose. No other organisms can do it as effectively as fungi, which makes them incredibly important for nutrient cycling, as well as overall ecosystem health by clearing out litter on the forest floor. The importance of fungal decomposition does not just stop at forest ecology, but there's also applications for using it to clean up certain pollutants in the environment, which are caused by humans, such as petroleum products and heavy metals. Without mushrooms doing decomposition, it would be impossible for ecosystems to function as they do now, and it is vital for both the environmental as well as well-beings for humans. Without a doubt, decomposition is an S+. Now, this is all I have for my tier list today, guys. There was a whole bunch of things that I couldn't include here, but perhaps I'll make more additions to this in the future. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any comments or anything you'd like to say, drop it down below. And stay fun, guy.